mean, we all are aware at this point that there's a faction within the GOP that is openly pro-Russia. We all know how Trump himself basically blocked aid for months on end, how Mike Johnson basically under Trump blocked aid for months on end. We all know how Marjorie Taylor Greene tried to torpedo aid from being passed. We all are aware that there is a faction within the GOP that is just pro Russia. And now, this sentiment has been openly verbalized by one person called Hakeem Jeffries. Hakeem Jeffries being, of course, the leader of the minority in the House of Speakers of the Democratic Party minority in the House of Speakers. A pretty well known figure considering his, um, well, there are pluses to him and there are minuses to him. We're not gonna be discussing these today. Today we're just gonna be discussing his statement about a pro-Russian faction within the GOP. U.S. could allow for American troops deployment to Ukraine, Democratic House leader uh, Jeffries. Of course, this title is, in my opinion, a bit misleading, a bit, I don't know how to call it. I think this title is inaccurate. I think this is a bit sensationalist. I think this is just incorrect. I believe that because it sort of implies that the US could just approve sending US troops to Ukraine as things are now, and that is not what Hakeem Jeffries has said at all, which actually the article itself will clarify, but I wonder just how many people will just read the headline be like, oh, US could allow for American troops in Ukraine. Wow. I guess US is about to send troops, huh? I wonder how many people will just read this headline and just will never read the article itself. Should Russia succeed in its war on Ukraine, the United States will likely have to intervene with more than just money, but also with troops, said U.S. Democratic House leader Hakeem Jeffries. So, see, already the first sort of main sentence paints a different picture. It is not the U.S. sort of approving sending troops to Ukraine to interfere in the sort of intervene in the war. It is more, should Russia succeed, we will be forced to involve US troops in the conflict because it will become much bigger and much dangerous than it is now, when it still be contained by Russia simply by the US and allies simply sending aid to Ukraine. You see? Do you see the difference here? The difference is quite big in my opinion. So again, the headline seems misleading. The headline feels misleading to me. We cannot allow Ukraine to fall because if it does, there is a significant possibility that America will have to intervene in the conflict, not just with our money, but with our troops, he told SBS News. Russian dictator Vladimir Putin is trying to restore the Soviet Union to threaten NATO countries, he said. First, the aggressor country Russia invaded Georgia and then annexed Ukraine's Crimea, he said. Are we to believe that in the face of this kind of consistent aggression, that if we allow Vladimir Putin to succeed in Ukraine, he will stop only in Ukraine? Jeffries asked. Of course not. A pro-Putin faction is growing in the Republican Party, which does not want to support Ukraine and for some reason believes that Russia is not an enemy of the United States, he added. He noted that Marjorie Taylor Greene is the head of support for Russia in the United States, which we all remember the crazy amendments that she's made to the bill, which included uh, space laser technology and reducing the aid to zero. Possible NATO troop deployment into Ukraine. So this is basically the article. We could be taking a look. We could be taking a look at the conference itself. We could be taking a look at Hakeem Jeffries' statements on video as they've been done on during the interview, but I don't think we need to do that. I think the written quotes are enough for us to work with. It is, once again, we're seeing this sort of situation in which we see a lot of talking. We see a lot of sort of this rhetoric of if we don't stop Russia here, we will face dire consequences. Troops will have to be sent to the European theater in order to fight against Russia because it will become a much broader threat than the so far contained threat, and we must send aid and we must do our best. But putting the statements aside, there is this ongoing problem of the actions of the Ukrainian allies not quite matching their words. The words are, we will do our best, we will aid as much as possible, we will be with you till the very end, which ironically enough might be the truth, and we will just aid, 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 aid. But the actions speak a different story. The actions speak a story of sending little drips of aid. The actions speak a story of delayed aid. The actions speak a story of aid in much smaller quantities than it should be. The actions speak a story of Europe having access to many, many, many anti-air systems and being reluctant to share even a small amount of them. It's like, I think it's fair to say that we are getting a bit tired of words and we would like to see some more decisive action. It is further disheartening since just recently we have read an article explaining how the newly approved aid from the US will be reaching the Ukrainian front line within several months because of many logistical problems, many sort of, it takes time for the weapons to reach Ukraine. There's transport to consider. Even though, as far as I remember, right after the signing of the aid, many people have been very confidently saying that actually the aid will be coming to Ukraine much sooner than expected because a lot of the weapons have already been stored in Poland, so it's just a matter of quick boom boom to Ukraine from Poland. But now it turns out that now actually there's a lot of weapons that will take a really, really long time to ship to Ukraine. Several months of time, in fact. So we're seeing a bit of like a disconnect from what we've heard right after the approval of the aid and what we're hearing now. And that is actually really frustrating to hear the words that warn time and time and time again, should Russia succeed here, Russia will go further. Russia will attack the Baltic states, Russia will attack Poland and many other places. It will be catastrophic. US troops might be forced to be on the ground. It's a situation which we must avoid. So we are hearing all these voices from different countries. This time it's been from the minority leader of the Democratic Party, Hakeem Jeffries. We hear this sort of sentiment all over Europe as well. And then we see actions that do not seem to align with the goal of not letting this outcome to happen. And one could say, oh yeah, but in reality, Russia is not doing that good. Russia is gaining small territories. Russia's gains are very small. Russia is not really winning in any sort of decisive or meaningful way, even though it started out, it lacks ammunition, it lacks many things. And sure, while this may be true, the reality is also, and that is also the caused by this mismatch between words and actions. The reality is also that Ukrainian cities continue being bombed, infrastructure continues to be damaged, critical electricity infrastructure continues to be destroyed. 1/3 of the country is mined. That's like the last estimate that I've heard, which will take generations, like decades to demine. Like Ukraine keeps being devastated, even though Russia, technically speaking, is not gaining any new significant ground. And that is a huge problem because all of this could have been avoided. All this was completely avoidable if the aid had received, if Ukraine had received the aid faster and with in better quantity. Like, it's not even just, like, we have to remember when discussing this war that it's not just a matter of whether or not Ukraine will win or lose. It's also at what cost will Ukraine lose? Just how much damage more will Ukraine have to endure before it, for example, wins? Just how devastated the victorious Ukraine will have to be, depending on how long this war will go on. Just how many more Ukrainian civilians will have to die, how many more Ukrainian soldiers will have to die, which absolutely could have been avoided if aid, for example, would not have been stalled for 6 months. 6 months. Like, there are more questions than the simple question of whether or not Ukraine will win or lose. Because there's a matter of what this victory will look like and what will be the situation of Ukraine itself during that victory. What will be the state of Ukraine during that victory? Because if the victory of Ukraine will mean a victorious Ukraine left in a state of total disrepair that will take many, many years to undo, then that sort of also is on the West because of the way aid is being handled. Sure, we can still speak about victory, but it is also a fact that victory could have been achieved much sooner. It could have been achieved with with less cities destroyed, with much less lives lost. It is a thing that people tend to overlook and tend to not really speak about much. The cost of the aid being handled the way it is. Well, that little news about